Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. In this update, we're going to be tracking a winter storm for those areas across the west, active wildfires, and multiple rounds of severe storms. So let's zoom out and give you an overall view of what's happening across the board. You can see up here and across the Pacific Northwest, that's where the active winter storm is taking place, with heavier snows and blizzard-like conditions across those areas into the Sierra Nevadas, Intermountain West snows, as well as areas into Alberta, into Saskatchewan, as well as into Manitoba, and then further south into Montana, as well as into the Dakotas are seeing some heavier snows. You can actually see the increased winds in the upgraded critical fire risk for those areas that have already seen a lot of wildfires, and the largest wildfire they've ever seen there in Texas, only about 15% contained. Now we've seen another upgrade. You can actually see the fire taking place on the satellite picture. Further south, there's the more active subtropical jet stream. We've got a lot of dry air highlighted over the Great Lakes as well as into the Northeast. But we do have an active storm system off the East Coast, and that storm system will be traversing up the East Coast, increasing the rain showers for them. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns on North America as well as the tropics, hit the subscribe button and follow along as I put out a detailed weather report almost on a daily basis to keep you well ahead of the storm. So here's the overall expanded view showing you that ridge of high pressure that's highlighted across a good part of the Great Lakes and as well as into the Northeast. Compliments of that southwest winds, very warm conditions for those time frames of the first week of March. But there's the cold shot, right? So that's the reason why we're getting some of those heavier snows. March is a transition month, so we're coming out of winter headed into spring. So obviously you get some active warm-ups, but we do have cold shots at times, and those cold shots will bring the heavier snows now, but it'll also bring some severe storms, especially as we head into Thursday, Friday, and potentially even Saturday, as we get a stronger system and a stronger cold front by then. So here's the setup on the temperatures right now, and plenty of warm conditions, right? It's feeling every bit like spring across the central and eastern 2/3 of the US. Those 80s are showing up on the map in Texas. Extends into the Oklahoma region. Unfortunately, that's where the dry air, the low humidity values out there in the Texas Panhandle, western Oklahoma, into Kansas, that's where they're seeing the wildfires. But look at the surge further north into Illinois, all those areas across that region, well into the 70s, well into the 60s in Michigan, as well as into Wisconsin. I mean, it's only really somewhat cool, really, across those areas in far extreme portions of New England. And then, of course, out west, where they are seeing a more significant cold shot and some of those heavier snows. But unfortunately, here is the upgraded, now critical risk for fire dangers across this region. We're seeing very high winds approaching 50 miles an hour at times, under very low humidity values, upwards in the teens, sometimes in the single digits, and those low dew points. That is all a recipe fueling those fire risk into the same areas that have already seen a lot of fires, unfortunately, and it's still ongoing, with the biggest one in Texas only 15% contained, right around 1.1 million acres so far scorched, and over 500 structures damaged with this system. So just a devastating situation, and this is the last thing they want to see. And that extends all the way into the Pecos region, does include Amarillo, back into Canadian, even to the Woodward and back into Alva are under that critical fire risk. That's for today, and it likely extends into tomorrow, because things just don't really want to change all that much. Because if you look at the overall setup, here's the northern branch. We've got the split flow that we've been normally dealing with, is with this El Nino type setup. That's bringing the colder conditions on the northern side of that jet stream. On the southern side, this is an active low pressure setting up shop across Southern California into the Baja California there. And further out ahead of it, we are going to be seeing a little bit of a short wave, and that's the first initial cool shot of air that's going to provide that upward rising motion air and that kind of the lift mechanism with this short wave that will be moving across portions of Texas later on tomorrow, especially into the afternoon region. and there's going to be tapping into that some of those warmer dew points and some of the moist air. So you can see the separation why we have a dry line in place, really setting up across West Texas into Central Texas. If you live, you know, west of that dry line there, that's where all the lower dew points are. That's the fuel, the recipe to ignite those fire dangers out there. If you live to the right of there, that's the warm sector. That's where you have the opportunities, especially with that short wave that will be coming across, mainly highlighted east of the I-35 corridor. But those areas could see some stronger thunderstorms as we kind of bubble up the action of the heat of the afternoon, especially into tomorrow evening, where things could see some, you know, stronger wind gusts and some smaller hail. But there's your winter storm back behind that. So there's all the recipe for extreme risk for winter storm impacts, especially around Truckee and the Donner Pass. Those are pretty much next to impossible to travel up there with just feet and blinding blizzard snows out for them. And those heavier snows do extend into Idaho, back into Montana, and that gets into the Dakotas region. And that does swing as far south into Utah as well as into Colorado there. And that will, you know, continue to bring those colder conditions and all the heavier snows in its wake. We've got the first initial cold front, I think, on Monday. That's the system that will be providing that lift and causing that atmosphere to overturn, producing some of those sporadic, isolated, scattered showers, and some of those could be turning on marginally induced severe. So it does include some smaller hail and some, you know, higher wind gusts, especially east of the I-35 corridor, east of Dallas there, into the Houston Metroplex, likely east of San Antonio, back into the Lake Charles region, into New Orleans, up here into Shreveport, up into Little Rock, as well as into the Springfield region. Those areas could be activated, especially into late tomorrow night, late tomorrow afternoon into the evening areas. And then as we go into Tuesday, that continues to shift off to the east. So you got two systems, right? So you have that first system that was highlighted across the Carolinas. Now that's going to be sent further north, highlighted across into those areas across the Northeast, especially the further you live by the coast, the heavier rains you're going to get with that system. And then here's the second system that will be traversing across back behind it, bringing increased showers for the Southeast, as well as into portions of the Ohio Valley, heading into that Tuesday time frame. And then of course the snows will still continue to be ongoing, with that stronger cold shot starting to enter the picture for them across the Pacific Northwest. So as we, you know, get into Wednesday, you can see that system starting to kind of merge together with that second system. Now that's going to be bringing those heavier showers into the mid-Atlantic as well as in the Northeast, but all eyes will be heading out west again with a more significant system that's starting to impact those areas into the West Coast, bringing more light to moderate rains for those areas into California. And that is the main system that we're going to be watching, especially along the subtropical jet stream, of things getting more active as we head into Thursday. So going into Thursday, you can almost see where the low pressure will be highlighted by then. It's right essentially here just south of California there into the Baja California, and further off. And this is the lift mechanism that's going to be providing. This is your overall water vapor transport index. So this kind of gives you elevated levels, especially once it's able to tap into the Gulf of Mexico. That's going to be increased moisture, and then you of course have that low pressure back behind it, going to provide that lift mechanism, and that could set the stage for even stronger possibility of severe storms, especially as we beginning on Thursday. And I think these are even getting more intense on Friday into Saturday. So we'll break it down for you. Here's the vorticity highlighted across those areas into the deep southwest. That's the system that will be moving across. And as it does, it's going to be tapping into some of that warm sector, colder air up back behind it, and you can have a greater lift with this one. That means an increased opportunity and a deeper low pressure, more significant low pressure that you're going to be having to work with. And that could produce a round of showers and thunderstorms, and some of these could be on to the marginal, even slight severe side by the time we head into Thursday. So if you live again those areas into across the I-35 corridor into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, into the Oklahoma City region, Tulsa, likely southeastern Oklahoma, heading into Kansas, that is your main favorite area that we'll be watching for, marginally induced, some slight risk for severe storms likely by then as we head into Thursday afternoon, especially into Thursday night, looks to be a little bit more significant. So you got three systems. First one's highlighted across the Northeast. The second one's across the Central Plains. And then, of course, you've got a third system that will be coming ashore on the West Coast. And that is going to be the main system that will be moving across that would set the stage for possibly even a stronger setup as we head into Friday, because you can see a deepening low pressure by then, mainly really getting its act together across the Red River there. And just to the right of there, once they've got a lot more moisture to work with, it really starts to extend and kind of explode with those moisture values, a little bit higher dew points, and those could be definitely more intense. We could even be looking at more of an enhanced risk for severe storms heading into Friday, heading into Saturday. Nothing official from the Storm Prediction Center as of yet, but this looks to be definitely the most favored area for the most significant severe storms, up into the week ahead. And this is typically where you would see severe weather as we head into the month of March. So this is storm season. It's actually severe weather awareness week coming up for next week for the National Weather Service. And just letting you know, so hey, this is the prime time where we would typically starting to see more active severe weather. And this is exactly where a lot of the heavier severe weather would likely unfold across the southern plains, heading into those areas into the southeast, across the Dixie Alley. So this is your greatest concern area as we head into Friday and especially into Saturday. So here's the setup for Friday. I think it really starts to highlight into coming out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, coming out of the Oklahoma City region, heading into East Texas, southeastern Oklahoma by then, going into Arkansas, heading into Louisiana, and especially as you get into Mississippi and Alabama, those could likely even be more intense as they have a little bit more moisture to work with, as they have a little bit higher warm sector, and that cold blast, a little bit more significant cold blast. Not as significant as what we saw last week, but still dropping those temperatures a good bit, 10, 15, maybe even 20 degrees at times from what you're seeing now. So there's the overall lighting display and supercell setups that would likely unfold as we head into Friday, going into east of the I-35 corridor, eastern Texas, southeast Texas, heading into Louisiana, back into Arkansas, but especially going into Mississippi. This will eventually head into Alabama, and that vorticity will just continue to move across those areas across the southeast, heading eastbound. So out ahead of it, you're in the warm sector again, into the southeast, and this is the more favored area going into Saturday with severe storms. Again, nothing official from the Storm Prediction Center, but we do have an elevated risk for severe weather likely in place into those areas, into Alabama, back into Georgia, into the Florida Panhandle, and that would likely swing into portions of Tennessee, heading into the Carolinas the deeper in the day on Saturday. But this is the breakdown on the snow. So you do got the cold side of the system. There's the heavier snows across the western regions, especially those areas in the Cascades and the Sierra Nevadas. We're talking feet, blizzard-like conditions for them, and heavier snows across the Intermountain West. There's the heavier snows into Alberta, into Saskatchewan, as well as into Manitoba. They could be picking up some good amount of snowfall for them. And some of that snowfall could likely extend into Montana, heading into the Dakotas here, as well as into portions of Minnesota, but not much for the central and eastern 2/3 because you're obviously under that ridge of high pressure. Maine might see a little bit, but that's areas that you can only see with that low pressure center coming up. So yeah, Maine could pick up a couple of inches from this system, But there's your rainfall. So you got the rainfall further to the west. Most of this is going to be in the form of snow, like I showed you. But there's the dry setup with the dry line. And unfortunately, you just miss out where they're going to be seeing the wildfires. It likely does miss you, unfortunately. But once you get to the east of the I-35 corridor, that elevated risk for severe storms and heavier rainfall really likely starts to ramp up, especially as you get into the deep south, into the southeast. Some of these areas could see some flooding rains potentially by Thursday, Friday, especially heading into Saturday. And then, of course, that first system that will be moving up the East Coast, the further you live into the coastal regions, the heavier rains you're going to be. The further you live into the interior regions, the lighter precipitation you would likely get from the system ahead. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch me next update. Why protect you before and after the storm.